Berkey's a scammer. That's the truth. Like, when you run a trading site and you can't beat the games, like, you're a scammer. Like, people know Berkey's like poker history. All know he's like a bum. Like, he sucks.
He's a little bitch. We know he's a little fucking bitch.
I know.
Nick Airball is the laughing stock of the public poker sphere.
Don't fail at something else.
In this video, we are reviewing a hand that was set up so perfectly that it almost seemed like a scene from a movie. The protagonists of this story are professional poker player Matt Berkey and alleged investment banker Nick Airball, who just so happened to be in the middle of a heated heads-up battle that has been rife with controversy and long-ass bathroom breaks. The setting is the PokerGo studio in Las Vegas. Matt is sitting in seat 3, and Nick is sitting right beside him in seat 4, which I'm sure was totally coincidental. And of course, this was the first time that PokerGo decided it would livestream its play. What could possibly go wrong? The action folds around to Berkey in the small blind with aces. He limps, Airball calls, and the flop is Jack 7 deuce 2 diamonds, giving Airball a flush draw, and Berkey checks. So blind versus blind in a limp pot with an oversized ante, the small blind will often have an overall advantage because although the small blind can limp virtually all of its range, the big blind, being last to act, should have an incentive to raise most of its strongest hands. However, both players' ranges should be relatively wide, which usually translates into a significant amount of checking and slow playing, including with aces in this particular case. Nick then bets around 3/4 pot, and with the flush draw plus some backdoor possibilities, betting this amount seems good as it should fold out a decent number of ace and king high combos in the small blind's range. Berkey then decides to raise it 3.5x, which according to this sim is generally not preferred. If we filter for combos that raise this sizing at least 50% of the time, it's mostly the more nutted hands, sets in 2 pairs. Queens do raise, but a good chunk of the EV from this play likely comes from protection, i.e. taking down the pot on the flop before an overcard can peel off on the turn or river. And although we can't read Matt's mind, I don't think his raise was for protection, but rather to accelerate growing the pot. But if that is your goal, you have to ask yourself, 250 big blinds deep, do you really want to play for stacks with just one pair? This will of course depend on the opponent and the runout, but at a minimum, you do need to be more cautious with single paired hands the deeper you get. On the other hand, if we lower the SPR to somewhere closer to 10, we do see that aces is nearly a pure raise. Nick then calls, and with a draw to a baby flush, this is the standard play. The turn is the king of clubs, and Berkey decides to overbet around 120% of the pot, continuing with his very polarizing line. But similar to the flop, the more you polarize, particularly when deeper, the higher the threshold becomes for value bets, and here the solver prefers doing this primarily with its absolute strongest hands. Top pair also throws in a few overbets as well, but this is because the king is blocking a significant chunk of villain's stronger range. That all being said, the solver doesn't only polarize on this turn. The ranges are wide enough with a variety of equity profiles to utilize smaller sizings as well. This king is likely better overall for Berkey's range since Nick should have raised many of his king X combos pre-flop. Accordingly, this turn actually diminishes the strength of most of Airball's range, which should consist of a lot of Jack X and lower pairs. And when this happens, you'll often see the solver actually size down to target villain's diminished range with both heroes bluffs and value bets, including in this case the small blind's aces. But again, this is just a theory, and perhaps given their recent history, Matt has a particular read on Airball, who is known to be rather loose, which would warrant sizing up. Nick calls again, which appears to be fine, albeit a bit of a borderline play, given the size of the bet and the fact that he should have a decent number of better calling candidates here, such as superior flush draws with a pair or a higher kicker. The river brings in the Yahtzee card for Nick, making his flush, and Matt decides to pump the brakes a bit with a blockish 50% pot bet. And slowing down here does seem to make sense, as Airball had called 2 large bets on the prior streets, which, when coupled with the flush coming in, diminishes the equity of aces significantly. Airball then shoves, which according to this sim is mandatory against Matt's bet size, and the wide ranges blind versus blind. And after a long tank, in the middle of some ear-piercing cackling going on at the table, Matt flicks in the call and is shown the bad news. According to the sim, aces is just a pure fold regardless of the suit. Even if these ranges aren't accurate to reality, if we consider the line from pre-flop to the river, we have to ask ourselves, what are the likely hands Airball shows up with here? It went limp check pre-flop, which means Nick should have retained many of his suited combos. Flop went check, large bet, large raise, call, turn went overbet call, and river went small bet shove. Given this line and how deep these guys were, it seems that Airball is primarily saying that he has a flush or a bluff, making Matt's aces a mere bluff catcher. And so the next practical question is holding the ace of diamonds a good or bad factor? On the one hand, it blocks the nut flush, but on the other hand, it also blocks potential bluffs that Nick could be doing this with. Since we don't know these guys' actual ranges, we can only speculate, but it would seem that Nick should have been inclined to raise many, if not all of his ace-x of diamond combos pre-flop. Also, it would seem to be plausible to bluff here with something like ace-jack, ace-7, or ace-deuce with the ace of diamonds, and we've seen Nick pull off similar moves like this before. So perhaps Matt could just fold here with the ace of diamonds, but call with something like king deuce with the king of diamonds, or king queen with the queen of diamonds, which block more of the flushes, and unblock bluffs like the ace of diamond combos we mentioned, and something like 10-9 with a diamond. That all being said, if Nick is overbluffing here, then obviously that would make calling in Matt's shoes much more profitable, and Berkey definitely should have better sense of Nick's tendencies, and after all, his name is fucking Airball. Additionally, on a live televised stream, with the heated beef between the two, there is of course the psychological factor as well, of an intention whore being highly incentivized to pull off a big bluff just to rub it in his enemy's face. And then, after the hand is over, during the ending credits, Nick demands all of Berkey's chips, and when Berkey doesn't comply, Nick takes it upon himself to rake them in like it's a McDonald's Happy Meal, yelling, "My chips, motherfucker." Now, some didn't really care for Nick's antics, but frankly, I didn't mind. And this comes from someone who's more Team Berkey because Matt's always been cool to me in our brief interactions. And although I definitely prefer watching higher level players, the shit talking and other extracurricular activity that happens in the live environment is what makes it fun. I think streams just need to find the right balance between different types of players. So even though, in the words of the great Nick Schulman, Airball is a grotesque creature and one of the most disgusting sights ever seen, I for one actually do find him entertaining. So that's the video for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay balanced.
Disorder!